Agensa Energy Ghana. And it is an honor to be your moderator for today. So without wasting much time, for today's webinar, we have established a few objectives for today. That is for, like, in summary, just 3 objectives for today. As we journey along the way, you can have some sub-objectives for yourselves as we go. You can, get into your own personal objectives through certain questions that you might want to ask to explore or to fulfill those objectives. So for today and for this webinar, our first objective, okay, is to understand what industry codes and standards mean. Okay, we want to have a clear understanding of what industry codes and standards are and why do they matter? Why should we prioritize understanding industry codes and standards? That's going to be one of our major objectives for today. We are also going to explore, try and understand. So for example, with certain roles like design and inspection engineers, we want to know how these two specifically roles use industry and standards in their line of work. We want to understand, we want to have a full understanding of that as well. And finally, we want to also understand or be guided, okay, as young professionals, how we should go about learning industry and standards and industry codes and standards, as well as how to be guided to possibly exploring career ventures from that. So basically, that's going to be our 3 objectives for today. Thank you very much. So going forward, we are going to have some 3 housekeeping rules. I don't know if you can still hear me. Can someone confirm if they can hear me?
Yes, please, I can.
Okay, thank you so much, Charity. So respectfully, for this webinar, we want to have a very, very, very smooth webinar today, and then we are going to want to respect these 3 rules, all of us. So number 1 on the list is for us to mute our microphones. That is, if you're not speaking, kindly, we do want you to mute your microphone as this webinar is ongoing. We want you to also make use of the Zoom features. That is the raise hand icon. If you want to speak, you duly use that, and then I will be sure to unmute you for you to speak accordingly. Also, all questions, contributions, suggestions, anything you would want to say as and when it is required, please, we do suggest that you direct everything of that sort to the chat box. I'll be notified if you send anything to the chat box, and I'll be sure to read through the messages and pay attention to any suggestion, contribution, or question that you would want to ask. Thank you so much for respecting these rules in advance. Okay. So without wasting much time, I'm going to proceed with the rest of what we have today for this webinar. Okay. Oh my God. So for today, if you've ever been in an SPE webinar, you do know that 90% out of 100 of the time, there's going to be an ice-breaking question. I don't know if anybody can confirm that in the chat. I have been in a few webinars that the ice-breaking question does not seem to pass. I don't know if anybody can confirm that in the chat. Has anybody been in any webinar, SPE webinar to be precise, that for some reason ice-breaking question was not part of? I really want to see what you guys will say. Okay. I want some reactions in the chat box. I'm not getting any. Please, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so more than 90% of the time for me, right? Particularly for most of the webinars that I've been in, I've always been seeing a session for icebreaker. Okay, so you can hear me. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Charity. And thank you, Daniel. So I was saying, now that you've confirmed that you can hear me, I'm asking if any of you have ever been in an SP webinar that you just did not see ice-breaking questions. I don't know. For me, it's like, no, it's impossible. I don't know, 90 out of 100 of the time, you would see an ice-breaking question. I don't know. I really want a confirmation. Okay. 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 So for this part of the webinar, we want to get into an ice-breaking session. I have a total of 3 ice-breaking questions, just 3, okay? Before I introduce the ice-breaking questions, I really need some reactions in the chat box because this really requires fastest fingers. Fastest fingers possible, because I'm going to need to count some winners, right? So I need some fastest fingers. I need some more reactions so that I can release my ice-breaking questions. Okay, Danny said we are ready. That's a nice one. I need another person. Can I have another person agreeing with Danny in the chat box? Okay, Sivera. Oh, okay, that's nice. I want to have as multiple people that I can have so that I can now start from releasing the ice-breaking questions. Anybody? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, Prince. Thank you, Prince. Oh, okay, okay, okay. This is good, guys. Thank you so much for reacting. Okay, so for starters, I'm going to release my magical ice-breaking questions. I need fastest fingers. This one is for fastest fingers. They are up to 3. Maybe when we get to the third one, if I see who is the winner, there's a possibility that you could get a gift actually. So please let's pay attention to the screen. So for the first icebreaker question for the day, I'm going to have, I don't have drum rolls, so I can't do drum rolls, but let's see. Okay. So for our first major question for today, we have what major SP conference is happening this month, 2025? We want to know those that are following SP, those that are paying attention to the content. We want to know just those who are in. Oh, wow, I have a, okay. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, Nancy, thank you. Thank you so much for your inputs. I need more inputs. I need more inputs on this ice-breaking question. What major SP conference is happening this month, May 2025? Nancy, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. I just need another person to try and, take the prize from Nancy. Okay, the conference at Oman. Oh, okay. Wow. These are really good guesses. Oh, okay. Someone gave me acronyms. That's nice. Okay, I need 2 more inputs. 2 more inputs for this ice-breaking question. 2 more inputs. This is exciting. Oh, look at that. Nancy, hi. This is really good. Okay. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Okay, Emmanuel. Thank you. That's a really good one. I can see all of you just really do pay attention to SPA information. That's really nice. So now let's unveil the answer together. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so now what major SPA conference is happening in May 2025? And we have the Africa Technology Conference. It's happening in May 2025. Nancy, you were so close. I mean, I can see that afterwards you typed African Technology Conference. That's a good one. Danny, you've typed ATC. Well, maybe out of two, I'll give you one. Out of two, I'll give you one. I would say, well, Nancy was close. So for our ice-breaking question number one, we do have a winner. I'm going to give it to Nancy Osei. Thank you so much, guys, for participating. This is a really fun one. Now, Moshina was part of the audience. Okay, so let's move to our next ice-breaking question for this webinar and for the day. Okay, let's see. Yes, Danny, because you use an abbreviation, ATC can mean anything. So yeah, so let's go with the second question for today. Oh, wow. Okay. So which country is this webinar happening? Is it Ghana? Is it Equatorial Guinea? Is it USA? Is it Spain? Oh, wow. I can see there's a battle in the chat box. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, let's see some more answers. Oh, I'm not seeing any Ghana. Are there no Ghanaians in this webinar? Please. It could be held in, exactly, yes. It could be held in Ghana, it could be held in Spain, Equatorial Guinea, Ivory Coast, Togo, I don't know, Ukraine, Russia. Oh, I'm seeing, that's what I'm talking about. No, Danny, you are not a Ghanaian because you chose a different country. Okay, these are really good guesses, guys. Okay. These are nice. So let's see. Let's unravel the answer. Me, I don't know. So let's see what's going to be the top answer. So for which country is this conference happening? Let's see. Oh, we have Tanzania. Oh my God. Nancy. I think Nancy won this round too because she was the first person to comment Tanzania. So yes, it is 4-1. 2 points for Nancy for the first one, 2 points for the second one. Danny is on one. Danny, you have to try and redeem yourself. Please. Oh, my Ghanaians. Don't worry, next year, the technology conference will be held here, okay? So for our last and final icebreaker for the day and for this webinar, this one I really could use a different winner. Nancy, you're so good. You're so good. But if you win anyway, it's a good one. But I really could use, Danny, please try and get this one. So for our last and final icebreaker for today, hi, Freeman. Icebreaker for today, we are going to have, okay. What is the theme for this year's conference? What is the theme for this year's conference? Anybody? I'm still monitoring the chat box because I really want to see the, wow. Okay, that's a good one. Wow, these are really good guesses. I mean, these are really good answers. Okay, let's see. Now it's going to be tough for me to who I should call the winner. Okay, now let's see some more inputs. Let's see some more inputs. Okay, so wow, these are really good. Hmm, okay, wow, look at that. I see. Okay, these are really good answers. Thank you so much for participating in this ice-breaking question. Oh my God. Wow, okay. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Let's unravel the answer to this third and final icebreaker for the day. So I'm going to unveil it, okay? I'm seeing navigating. I'm seeing a future. Okay. Wow. Okay, so now the answer has been unveiled. I really don't know how to mark this one. So all those who commented, please check the answer and let's see the marks you give yourselves. Okay, but these are really good guesses. Thank you guys so much for participating in this icebreaking session. You've made it really fun. I have a good audience. Amazing. Thank you, team. Okay, so for the icebreaking question, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Dani. Thank you. Thank everybody. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Charity, for participating. Danny, no, I'm sorry. Danny, I'm sorry. You can't have this one too. I mean, you were very close. You were very close, but unfortunately, yeah. Maybe our next webinar. Okay. So for the next objectives for today's webinar, we are going to move to the program outline for today. So for today's session, we are going to have a few two beautiful personalities joining us today. Two beautiful personalities joining us today. And me, myself, I cannot wait. Okay, so for today's program outline, we're going to have an opening address. And then we are going to have our first presentation by one of the honorable members that are going to teach us a lot today. We are also going to have a second presentation. We are going to have a cross-questioning session. We're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to have a feedback survey. A link will be pasted in the chat. We are going to also have a vote of thanks, and then we'll be done for today's webinar. Again, thank you so much for making time for today's webinar. So up next, we are going to have an opening address by Engineer Daniel Opon. Engineer Daniel, please, if you are ready, we are also ready for you. Please do give us the opening address. Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Engineer Daniel. We can hear you.
Can you see me or?
Yes, please. We can't. I can hear you.
All right. So I'm very glad that all our efforts is coming to fruition today. When we as a team came together to ask ourselves, what are some of the pertinent questions and informations that young people, young professional students are seeking to learn about the industries. We put them together, and one of the key points that was noted was the fact that a lot of young persons do not have full understanding of what codes and standards are in the industry. And so many people get into the industry, and in the middle of their career, then they begin to face challenges with codes and standards. And so we want to help a lot of young fellows to be able to understand what these things mean from the beginning. And that's why we are having this webinar to help young professionals, students, and already senior professionals who may be struggling to understand what codes and standards mean in our industry. We've put together fantastic industry experts who are experts in these fields to be able to tell us how these things work and what they mean. I implore every one of us to get our notebook, and you know our webinars from the Career Guide session is always geared to educate us and to help us to be better persons. And so I will endeavor every one of us to get their notebooks, stay poised, learn, put your questions together. If during the presentation you have any questions, you can post them to the chat box. The moderator will pick them up, and we'll be able to have a good session. Thank you to the speakers. It's been a long one coming, but we are all grateful that today we are having a great session. Thank you all, and have a great session today.
Okay, thank you so much, Engineer Daniel, for your wonderful opening address. I can really relate to that. It's been a question that young engineers are definitely curious about. I can very much relate, especially being in Genta. Sometimes you can hear some codes and it's like, what's that one to, right? So that's very important. Thank you so much, Engineer Daniel. So proceeding with the session, we are going to get to the main event of the day, what we've all been waiting for. We are going to get to that as soon as possible. Okay, so to our very first speaker for the day, like I said earlier, we have two wonderful personalities that have made time today for you and I, for the young professionals to explain to us or to share to us their expertise and their knowledge. So for our first speaker, I have the singular honor of introducing this first speaker to us. So I'm going to just go right ahead because I can't wait to hear what he has for us today. So our first speaker is going to be Engineer Augustine. Engineer Augustine is a graduate petroleum engineer with 6 years of professional experience spanning the upstream oil and gas operations, okay? He has expertise in data analysis and fuel and lubricant testing as well. And he's a professional member of GHIE. I'm sure we all know GHIE, Ghana Institution of Engineering. And he's a member of SP2, Society of Petroleum Engineers, and he's also a member of the National Society of Black Engineers as well. He's a trainee member of ASTM International too. It's an honor to have you here, sir. So he currently serves as a quality manager of the petroleum laboratory at the Ghana Standards Authority. He oversees the integrity and compliance of fuel and lubricant testing processes. In addition to this official duty, Engineer Augustine offers consultancy services as well to both organizations and individuals. He advises on the most suitable fuels and lubricants for various automobiles and machinery. He is ISO certified, okay, ensuring that his work aligns directly with international standards for laboratory competence and quality. So my audience, my able audience, if you join me, I need some massive reaction in the chat box. Before I give the floor to our first speaker, I need some massive reaction. This is someone that has made time to share with us what he has learned over the years in his experience as an engineer. You don't have that. There's no handout to come by and say, I want the experience of Engineer Augustine. You can't Google it, okay? ChatGPT cannot even give that to you. So I need some nice reactions in the chat box. as we welcome our first speaker for the day. Okay, I'm seeing Philippa. Thank you, Philippa. I want to see Nancy. I want to see Danny. Nancy, don't worry. I'll count the winner for the ice breaking session. These are really good. Thank you, guys. Okay, I'm seeing wonderful, wonderful reactions in the chat box. Okay, so Engineer say, Augustine, please. The platform is yours. Thank you so much for spending the day with us today.
Thank you.
Okay. I will don't share my screen, so.
No. Good afternoon to you all. I am grateful to be here because SP has been part of my life right from UMass, and you know we're always the Petro Bowl champions, right? Yeah, so it's an honor to be here, and then I'm grateful for the opportunity to say a few or interact with my colleagues, industry professionals, and students about the few years of experience and the things I know about standards and industry codes.
Everybody here.
Please, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, please, we can.
Okay. All right. Just a minute, I want to share my screen with you so that you could.
That's fine.
Yeah, good afternoon once again. Can my screen be seen, please?
Yes, please. We can't see. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you too. Yeah, so I'm having some network issues, so 1 minute, I'll be through.
Yes, please.
Okay, so as I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I've always been a member of SPE, and SPE has really impacted my life. So it's just an opportunity to also share the little I have with you. So I'm going to present some standards from where I sit and from where I work as a member of Ghana Standards Authority for the Petroleum Lab. So I'm going to present on standards. So my presentation has the following outline. I'm going to discuss what standards is, which I know most of you are already aware. As Madam Philippa already said, we want to know what is standard, the importance of standards, the types of standards, and then we'll zoom into the management standards, because of late, people are saying, I am ISO certified. Somebody's asking, is it the same as ISO accreditation? So I hope at the end of this webinar, we'll know whether to be certified and to be accredited is the same. So we'll talk about certification, accreditation, the certification agencies, and then we'll talk about the standards in the oil and gas industry. That will just be a general standard. And then I'll bow out for the next speaker to also speak to you. So I kindly have 20 minutes, so I'll be a bit fast, but if you don't get anything, of course, there is question and answer. So, okay, so let's go. Now, if they ask what is standards, now what comes into mind are these 5 things I've listed here: reference, yardstick, benchmark, guidelines. So we said standards are references, or they are yardsticks or benchmark to which products, processes, systems, and measurements are compared or referenced. In another way, they are also guidelines, established guidelines, specifications, and rules to ensure quality, safety, and consistency in product systems and processes. So basically, that's what standards do. It ensures conformity. It ensures that we are all on the same level playing field. Now, when we talk about consistency, I know that once there is a standard for water, water must meet certain standards. So if I produce water from Ghana and I produce water in another country, there should be a baseline which they will all meet. So that is the consistency we are talking about here. And so it gives you a level of predictability in your product. And as much as it gives customer trust, it enhances customer trust, because you know that what you are buying is of quality, because quality has been put in place, and then safety measures for the personnel and the product has also been. And then the major importance of standard is for trade facility, to trade, okay, to facilitate trade, so facilitation of trade. Now, you know, around the business world, many of these developed countries will say, oh, we are rejecting your goods because they don't meet our standards. So it has become a barrier to trade. If I want to export my products and they are rejecting it because it didn't meet their standards, then there is a barrier to trade. So to remove this barrier, standards have been set so that whatever I'm doing here can be equally the same wherever I go across the globe. So it's facilitation of trade. So you realize that of late, hello, do I have a question? Okay, then let me continue there. So also for regulatory compliances, for example, we have the Food and Drugs Authority, FDA. We also have Ghana Standards Authority. Now they give specifications for your product to meet. Now, if you go align with the standards, then you are ensured that your products are already meeting these regulatory compliances. Okay. Then for global acceptability and recognition, here we are talking about if a company is ISO certified, that company is globally recognized because standards are globally accepted. They are the acceptable ways or means of doing things because they ensure what we call conformity. Now, we also said standards, they promote efficiency. Now, efficiency in the way that if this is the guideline of doing certain things, if I follow that guideline, I know that the product I'm going to churn out is top-notch. So I'm not going to visit again to use resources to do that product again. So it's a means of reducing wastage and promoting efficiency. Now, I tell people that there are a lot of benefits of standard, but the major benefit, which I always tell people, is that standard brings orderliness into the world. You imagine that I decide to buy a dress and I give my length, and the length I give is not in what the systematic unit, the standard systematic unit, which we know IS unit. So they brought a dress, and then the dress is now hanging on me because my length that I stated was in pounds, and then in their system, they are using the metrics. And so they couldn't reconcile the unit. So that is hanging on me. Or worst case scenario, my temperature has been taken in Ghana and it is a certain degree Celsius, but somebody is using Fahrenheit, somebody is using other units, and there is no bridge between them. And then there is no measurement calibration, even showing that that thermometer I'm even using is giving me the required temperature as it is. So drugs could be administered to me at wrong temperatures, and then products could also fail at what? Different temperatures. And in the oil and gas industry, PVT analysis is one of the major things we do. Pressure, temperature, volume, we always measure. So measurement must be consistent and it must be what? Accurate. And all this is as a result of what? Standards. Now, there are types of standards. Now, when we talk about types of standard, I tell people we have mainly two types: the purpose of the standard and also the border in which the standard lies. Now, if I say the purpose of the standard, what it means is what is the standard doing? So in here, we have process standards, and these standards, they dictate how specific task is performed within an operation. So we have ASTM D4294, and ASTM means American Society for Testing Materials. The D is the designation for oil stuff. So this standard here is a sulfur standard. It gives the specification that the amount of sulfur that must be in what? A gasoline, which is what? The PMS, or people say petrol or super. We also have system standard. For example, I want to build my house. There should be a standard procedure that I'll follow in building my house. You don't just go and build anywhere. You don't build on any type of soil. And even the things you use in building. So in Ghana here, we have the GS 11209, which is the Ghana Building Code. Now, elsewhere, we have software systems. So you can talk about ISO IEC 9003, which is for software engineering. Then we have management standards. Recently, Ghana Gas said they are certified to ISO 9001. That's a quality management system. We also have ISO 14001. We are talking about sustainability development. We need to protect our environment. So this is talking about what? Environmental management system. Then we also have the occupational health and safety. The personnel's working must also be protected. So here we are also talking about ISO 45001. Then we have product standards. Products must also meet a certain standard. Like I said, water, there must be a standard. So we have GS 140 2022, and that is Ghana standard for motor gasoline. So all the petrol that comes into the country must meet this requirement before you are able to sell them in the country. Now, these are standards, as I said, for their level of application or the border. So here we have international standards, and they are developed for the global use. Okay, so we have ISO developing standards. We have IEC. IEC is International Electrotechnical Commission. We have ITU, which is International Telecommunication Union. They also have their own standards. As I said, we have ASTM. So these are globally adopted standards, which are used globally. They are accepted. Then we have regional standards. Countries come together and develop standards for their own use. So we have the EN standards, and these EN standards are the standards for the European Union. They are the EN standards for the European Union. Then we have national standards within the various countries. Countries also have their standards. So we have the DIN 51517. DIN are German standards. So even within the European Union, German still have their own standards. And that DIN 51517 is standards for gear oils. We have the IS standards, which are Indian standards. Okay, and the GS also means Ghana standard. You can also have the BS, which is the British standards. Now, how is standard developed? That is questions people ask. Now, ISO is a federation of national standard bodies. Okay, and then they have a directive for developing standards. But ISO as an organization or as a group of organizations don't just develop standards. They do that through what we call a technical committee. Now, this technical committee is an expert or a group of experts in that field, which the standard will be developed. So if we want to develop a standard in QMS, which is quality management system, or a standard in motor oil, then we have to have governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies, people within that industry who have the foreknowledge. They will sit up and then they draft these documents. And now these documents are not just drafted, but then they are drafted in line with a document which is designed for standards. And that document is what we call ISO IEC Directives Part 1. It states how standards should be developed. When you go to the UK, they also have BS0. The BS0 is named as Standard of Standards because the BS0 shows how other standards should be developed. So it's named as the Standard of Standards. Now, these standards are developed in line with what we call the World Trade Organization principles towards technical barriers of trade. Because standards, as you know, are voluntary, but then they enhance trade. So it should be globally accepted. So standards are developed in line with what we call the World Trade Organization principles to technical barriers. So these three types are types of standard based on how standard is developed. Now, aside that, I call something the 3 C's. Now, these 3 C's happen to be committee, consultation, and consensus. Now, committee, because a group of experts will come together and develop the standard. Now, it doesn't just end there, or it's not only accepted in that regard. But what happens here is that a draft is sent worldwide for parties which are interested, for industry players to also take a look, review, and then make comments. Now, when all these comments are done, then it's sent back to ISO. And then the technical committee members will now decide, input these comments, and then by consensus, they decide that this goes through. Now, there are times we are humans and consensus is not always built. Now, if consensus is not built, then they go by democracy. So we said majority carries the vote. So voting is then done, and then if majority votes, then the standard stands. So management standards. Now, when we talk about management standards, ideally we are talking about ISO 9001, which is the quality management system, ISO 14001, which is the environmental management system. Now, all these standards I've just mentioned have a unique way in which they are developed. Okay, so they are developed along these guidelines, which we call the scope, the normative reference, the terms and definition, the context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operations, and improvement. So I'm going to just quickly skim through so that we know. So for example, if they are developing a quality management system, which is ISO 9001, 2015, then the scope becomes the quality management system. That is the scope. That is the scope of the standard. Now, when do I go in for quality management system? If I am an organization and I'm channeling products. And one, I want to be what? Recognized globally. And two, I want my institution as a whole, the processes, the policies, the business, the core business of the company itself should be aligned to this document, which is ISO 9001. Then I go in for that. Now, so the scope tells you when an organization wants to what? To take into considerable effect its quality management system. So therefore, when we come to the 14001, you know that the scope of it is also what the EMS, which is the environmental management system. Then we have what we call the normative references. Now, when you are writing documents, you do citations and then you reference them at the latter part. But in case of these normative references, they are documentations. In essence, they are the ones that you need to follow to be able to implement the standards. So for a company or an organization to implement the 9001, then he needs to consult the normative references, because the normative references are documents, some of which are standards, which need to be first consulted so that you can now implement this. Then the definitions within the context of the standards only apply. For example, when we say an organization, in this context, we are referring to a person or a group of persons who decide to come together to do business. So what it means is that in this context, ISO 9001 regards even a person, an individual, also as an organization, once you, the individual, decides to do business. Okay, then we have the context of the organization. Okay, what are the factors that affect the organization internally, externally? The internal structures of the organization, so the organizational structure and culture. And then we are talking about the political, technical, and economic conditions that will affect the strategic business of the organization. So this must be factored in how your quality is going to be done. And then we said it shouldn't end there, but management must take proactive measures in leadership. So the business policies and objectives of the organization entirely should include quality policies and quality objectives. That means that once management owns it, you know that the organization is serious to implement it. So they are using what we call a top-down approach. Then we are talking about planning. You need to plan. Okay, so the measures you put in place to achieve an intended purpose. Then we talk about support. Now, management says this is the direction in which we are going. What is management doing? For example, we want to achieve our environmental management system. What it means is that personnel should be trained to even use safety devices. If I am at a workplace that we deal with fires and there are fire extinguishers, how often are those fire extinguishers checked to see whether they are functioning appropriately? How often are personnel trained to use these fire extinguishers, to use fire hoses? Does the organization have a master plan? How often do they practice drills? Is everybody aware of the safety measures of the organization? Is everybody aware of the quality measures put in place? Then we talk about the operations. Now, the operations here is you inculcating the systems in the business of the organization. So you look at how you can always improve on your management systems. Then we have something we call non-conformities. What am I doing that have deviated from the 9001, that have deviated from the 14001? They become non-conformity because they are not in conformity with the standard. So then you have to do what we call a preventive action and a corrective actions. And also, in case of this, we have what we call document control, not just keeping records, but documentation is very necessary. So what type of document is it? The document code. Which unit is the document from? For example, if we have a document code as GSHRFM, then I know that it's from management, as in GSA, directed to HR, and FM is what? It's a form. But if it's to the lab, you will see TC, which means technical document. And the revision code becomes the last part. So you see 1 or 2. So even if I take that document out of the system, it's already in the main system. So documentation here is a systematic process of creating, distributing, and then disposal of document. That is taken. And of course, before you can get to this, there should be what we call audit. Okay, so you internally audit your structures. Am I in line with this document? Have I put the requisite structures in place? So internally, you audit yourself, and then you do what we call appraisals. So when you audit yourself, you realize that I'm not in compliance, then the things you have to do to come back in to be compliant, you do them. So then we also have the 45,001, which is the occupational health and safety. So its scope is also the occupational health and safety. And so within the context of the organization, if we decide that, okay, we are interested in producing quality products, we are also interested in ensuring that we are up to EPA standards, which meets environmental regulations. So EMS, Environmental Management System. Now we want our personnel to also feel free. Okay, so workplace related injuries should be what? Avoided, or should become a thing of the past. We want our workers should feel free at the end of their work after their retiring age. They shouldn't go home with any external injury, with any havoc that will ruin their time of retirement. So then you have signed onto the 45,001 to protect the personnel also in the organization. Now, people go for this individual certification one by one, but you realize that it's only the fifth or from the fifth clauses that have changed. So what happens is that you can put these 3 documents together, which are the management system, to become what we call the integrated management system, which is the IMS. And currently is one of the certification GSA is in line to obtain. So then, certification. It has become very common of late. So what is it? So the certification is just like you've written an exam and then you'll be awarded a degree. Okay. So if you decide to be ISO certified to any of the previous management systems, then you put your structures in place. Now, when you put your structures in place, there will be an internal audit of those structures to see whether you are conforming to every clause of the standard. Now, if you are conforming, then you now write formally to ISO, and then they bring you an external auditor. So that external auditor is also going to audit the same structures, and that external auditor, if you meet the criteria, the very requirements of the standard, then you are awarded. So we can boldly say that Ghana Gas Company, which was awarded the ISO 9001, met the quality management requirements of that standard. So Ghana Gas is not accredited, but certified. Now, which bodies do the certification? We have the Bureau Veritas. Okay, we have the DNV, which is in Germany. SGS. SGS is even present in Ghana, but from France, when we have BAB from Britain. Now, accreditation. Now, accreditation is different from certification. Now, accreditation is an organization which perform the external auditing and certified you. So the body which is accredited has two mandates. The mandate to first assess whether another company is meeting the requirement of a standard, and then go ahead and certify that company. So accreditation is higher than certification, because accreditation involves the systems, the processes, the personnel themselves. Okay, and the one accrediting is the one who awards the certification. So now when we talk about accreditation bodies, there are a few. We have the IAF, and sorry, but the IAF is International Accreditation Forum. We also have the ILAC, which is International Laboratories Accreditation Corporation. So these bodies certify you. We have ANAP. The ANAP is the ANSI National Accreditation Body. When we talk about ANSI, ANSI is just like in Ghana, here we have Ghana Standards Authority. So ANSI is the American National Standard Institute. ANSI is the National Standard Institute of America. Many people think ASTM International is a non-profit organization, but it's a private. The national one for America is the ANSI. So ANAP is the American National Accreditation Body. Then we have the UCAS. The UCAS is the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. We have the DAX, which is for German. So they also give accreditation. KENAS, which is for Kenya. So the Kenyan National Accreditation Service. We have the SANAS, which is for South Africa. Unfortunately, Ghana, the only one we have is the institution here, but does not do the full accreditation specifics. So then, why accreditation? Now, accreditation is a demonstration that you can produce consistent, reliable quality results. I'll take that again. Accreditation is a demonstration that you can produce consistent, reliable quality results. So laboratories worldwide must be accredited. And the type of laboratory you are and the type of accreditation you go in for. So if, for example, GSA has a lot of testing and calibration laboratories. So we go in for what we call the ISO 17025, because it's the requirement for testing and calibration what laboratories. Now, if you are a medical laboratory,
Who are you?
now people even go to these medical labs without not knowing whether they need to even first be accredited. You go in and they give you results. You just accept them. Now, the question is that medical laboratory accredited? So for medical laboratories, you have to be accredited to the ISO 15189, which is the ISO standard for accrediting the medical laboratories. Then we have what we call PT companies. Now, PT is proficiency testing. Now, for example, if a lab decides to go for the 17025 or the 1589, the personnel within that lab, their proficiency level will be evaluated. How do they perform the test? How do they run the methods? So it's the PT companies, which is the proficiency testing companies, that assess the personnel, the proficiency of the personnel, and also assess whether their equipments are working. So the PT companies themselves who are doing the assessing must also first be accredited. So they are accredited to the ISO 17,043, sorry, 17,043. So it gives you the accreditation. So if we are going for ISO 17025 and we do a proficiency testing from a company that is not 17,043 accredited, ISO will not recognize that proficiency testing. Therefore, we have to come back again and do. Now, if you want to be an agency, an organization, a body that would certify products, then you go in for the ISO 17065. So it gives you the accreditation, personnel methods, and system certification for you to also certify what products, that this product is certified by me. Now, what it means is that FDA, GSA, and other certification bodies have this accreditation. Then we have what we call reference material company. Now, reference materials, what we do in the lab, we run machines. Now, what happens if me, the personnel, the test method and everything is good, but it's the machine that is not giving me the right result? Something is happening to the machine. So the reference materials are samples that have what? Prescribed number on them, which we call the designated number. Now, these numbers, for example, if I want to test sulfur, I have a reference material for sulfur. So, hello, Kofua. So if I'm testing for sulfur, I first run my reference material because I already know the value of the reference material. So if my machine or my equipment gives me that value back, then I know everything is okay with my machine and everything is okay with me, the personnel, before I run the sample, so that if somebody challenges your results, there is trace that I first run the reference material to be sure that I am okay, the test method is okay, the machine is okay before running your results. So whatever result you are channeling out is the actual results of that product. So that is the work of the reference material companies. Then we have the inspection bodies. Yes, so before you even be certified to a standard, and inspection bodies come to also even inspect the environment, inspect the warehouse where you keep product, inspect the company. So they are also accredited to 17 and 20. So if you are doing inspection by a body that is not accredited to this ISO, then you have to think again. So there are a few standards I listed here for application in the oil and gas industry. Now, I must say that aside the ISO standards, we have what we call the ASTM standards, which is American Society for Testing Materials. We also have what we call ASME standards, which is American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They also have their standards. We have what we call the SAE. They also have their standard, which is Society of Automotive Engineers. So every industry have standards. Some standards are generic, they cut across industry, and some are industry specific. Now, when you come, I remember when I was in school, the lecturer will tell you what is the API gravity of the crude oil. Now, API is the American Petroleum Institute. So they also have standards, guidelines for which a crude oil should meet, and even the activities in you drilling, doing casing, laying of tubes, and in production, your processes, the pipelines you are going to run, they should meet certain level of what? There should be a minimum grade, so what we call API grade of casings and tubings. So these are all because the grade is one determined by the components used to make the casing. And so if I'm laying a tube in maybe a sulfur environment, then there is a type of API grade casing I have to go for. And then if it's not a sulfur environment, there is another type. If the formation is competent, there is a type. If the formation is not competent, there is a type. So the API specs 5CT gives you the grading for casings and tubings. Now, if you are doing well completion, now after drilling, you have to complete you have to make it ready to be used for production. Now, that well completion and production must be done with the API 6A. Now, piping, because we channel crude oil through pipes for transportation purpose. Now, these pipes, normally offshore on production vessels, we do what we call, we run robots. So we call it a pigging operation to check whether the diameters are still the same, whether there is no debris, whether there are no rodents, So there are a means of checking the integrity of the pipeline. Now, these pipelines, because of the environment in which you are laying them, there should be a level of thickness. There should be the type of material used or designed to make that pipeline because of the environmental conditions as well. So these are few. Now, we can also add the ISO 2701, which is for petroleum, petrochemical industry. All of these are also standards we use in the oil and gas industry. And then I'll conclude by saying that standards are for life. Now, somebody will ask, why are they for life? Are they water that we drink? No, they are not water that you drink, but you realize that without standards, there'll be chaos in the world, because standards ensure uniformity and conformity. So imagine you are doing something in Ghana and you are just doing it haphazardly. Somebody elsewhere is also doing it haphazardly. How will the world be? If the water you drink doesn't meet certain level of turbidity, there are trace metals in that water. Currently, Ghana risks the exportation of cocoa because what? The EU are saying they'll start doing what we call heavy metal analysis for our cocoa because of the ongoing menace. So standards are applied in our daily life. Now, if my petrol is not meeting a certain requirement, it's not meeting some standard, what happens to my car? If there is a lot of sulfur, there is a lot of copper in your gasoline, what it means is that you are going to consistently change what? Your engine, because there's going to be a lot of what? Corroded parts. So your engine breaks down. There is what? What we call benzene. What is the acceptable level of benzene in gasoline? At the end of the day, your father is a driver, he drives, and after retiring, they say he has what? Leukemia, cancer of the body, because of the exposure of the type of gasoline he's exposed to. Okay. Last 2 years, there was hula balloon all over the country when the level of manganese rise in the gasoline. People said their spark plugs were just wearing off, spoiling, and then we have to sit up GSA, NPA, and other companies and look at the standard again, because apparently the manganese level in that standard was approved. But because the new modern cars have a reduced level for what manganese, it started affecting their spark plugs. So it tells you how standard is live. It just makes things easier for you and makes you flow in life. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Engineer Augustine, for this insightful presentation on industry standards. This is a whole new light to look at industry standards. I mean, I was wowed by the presentation. The highlights for me was the development of the standard process, that is the 3 Cs. And now I'm beginning to have flashbacks of certain happenings that are going on in my company. For example, there's been a lot of stress on document control, actually. I remember recently I was working on a procedure, and then my boss was like, have you reviewed the document control processes? Is it aligned and all of that? And I remember early in the year, we had a visit from one of the certifying bodies, SGS. They were here to audit us as well. So incredible presentation. Thank you, sir. That was an amazing one. We'll surely have questions for you in the next round, as and when it is allowed for us to have. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we are going to move on to our next and second and final presenter for today. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, again, thank you so much, Engineer Augustine. So that was an insight presentation. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our second speaker for the day. So our second speaker is in the person of Mr. Edward Ansah. He's a highly accomplished Ghanaian engineer with extensive expertise in the African oil and gas business. He's the technical service manager for Jesuit Asset Integrity Management Company currently as we speak. And he is a results-oriented person and an asset integrity engineer, also an API plant inspector. He has built a solid foundation in QA/QC activities related to asset integrity, ensuring that critical infrastructure's safety, reliability, and longevity is paramount. So he has a career spanning multiple African nations. So that include Equatorial Guinea, Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Namibia. Mr. Edward has played a pivotal role in Ghana's offshore and onshore asset integrity projects. He has proficiency that extends to corrosion management programs, as well as maintenance strategies and repairs of both offshore and onshore assets. He helps industries maintain operational excellence as well. So now, beyond his technical expertise, Mr. Edward is an asset integrity consultant. He's a project coordinator. He's a mentor and a volunteer, also a career counselor. We have an amazing person with us today. He's deeply committed to offshore maintenance strategies and computerized assets integrity management systems, ensuring that efficiency, compliance, and best practices are adhered to in our line of industry. Again, my able audience, I want to see some massive reactions in the group. At least for now, we know Engineer Augustine has given us what to expect. So now I'm expecting a massive reactions. I'm seeing a massive reaction from Stephen. I'm seeing who is next for me. I want to see some major reactions as we welcome Mr. Edward Ansah to the floor to speak to us today. Okay, I'm seeing some major reactions as well. Mr. Edward Ansah, please do us the honors of proceeding with your presentation, sir.
All right, good afternoon to you all. Please, can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. I will unshare my screen right now.
All right, it's a privilege to be with you. Thank you very much, Philippa, for the introduction. I want to say that I'm honored to be part of SPE Ghana chapter on this webinar. And we are hoping that it will be very insightful for all of us in terms of learning new things and also seeking to have some foundation to also research more on what we've talked about. I think Engineer Augustine made my life very, very easy for the systematic and simple breakdown of the various standards. And then in his presentation, he really made highlights on a lot of things for us if we're paying very attention. There are a lot of things he said, and which are also very reflective in what I am about to share. I think the standards and the codes are not, I would say that there are some similarities because one is embedded in the other. So, Philippa, maybe you can just help me get access to present. Okay. All right. Kindly confirm if you can see my screen. Okay.
Yes, sir. Please, you can see.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, SP Ghana, once again. It's a privilege to be with you. Our topic is understanding industry codes and standards. Our brother, Engineer Augustine, has touched on the standard. I'll look at codes and also standards a little bit because it's very relational in regards to the topic I'm going to talk about, especially in the oil and gas industry relating to quality assurance and then quality control. I've already been introduced. My name is Edward Ansah, and I'll just continue. The agenda for the presentation today, I'll be looking at introduction. I'll look at the role of codes and standards. I'll look at the key codes and standards in the oil and gas industry. I'll also be looking at the benefits of adhering to standards and code. Then we'll look at some careers in quality assurance, quality control in relation to this subject. And also we would look at the conclusion. Now, I'll start off with the introduction with the objectives. What we are seeking to achieve today, we'll define codes and standards in an industrial context, and then we'll explain their role in quality assurance, quality control systems. And we'll also understand how they ensure quality, safety, and regulatory compliance in the operations. I think one of the key things that Engineer Augustine really mentioned in his presentation was this point where he broke things down into the various systems and standards that are in relation to the industry, which was very, very beautiful to see. I identify key organizations and applicable documents. So that will be our objective for today. I want to start off with the role of codes and standard. Basically, codes are legally enforceable documents that stipulates minimum requirements for, I want us to take note, design, materials, fabrication, testing, and inspection. They are often developed by recognized bodies. And I remember in the presentation we saw earlier, some of these bodies were mentioned. They asked me, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, American Petroleum Institute, the International Organization for Standardization, and then a lot of them, which have this mandatory requirement. I think in the year past, especially in relation to American Society of Mechanical Engineers, somewhere in the 1880s, 1880 specifically, there was a growing need for safety and standardization. So a group of technical people and engineers came together in the US and then formed the American Society for Mechanical Engineers, which in our growing age has immensely been very, very with significant impact, both in the oil and gas industry, power plants, and then also in the mining industry as well. Standards, we have gone through standards, so I will skip this one because we've heard a lot about standards today. So I don't expect to repeat so much of this. I just want us to look at certain definitions as well. What is quality assurance, quality control, QAQC? Now, quality assurance is a systematic activity to ensure processes and products meet specific standards. And once again, I would say that Engineer Augustine touched on this. So quality control, we are looking at inspection and testing to verify that the final product meets the required quality standard. So now, why QAQC matters? Why does QAQC matters in the oil and gas industry or any other industry? You know, it's because it's critical for safety, environmental protection, and operational efficiency. Now, it prevents costly errors as well, and then also equipment failures and accidents. I must say that the oil and gas industry we see now has gone through a lot of phases. In the past, also in the 80s, somewhere in the 80s, the British or the UK had to bring out some mandatory requirements on how offshore or on how oil and gas operations are regulated. So I remember sitting under a course where I got to understand some of the way UK has grown over the years in relation to how to bring this standardization to ensure that there's some sort of uniformity and safety, and also in terms of bringing out operational efficiency in the various industry sectors. Now, the Piper Alpha incident actually broke the ice for the UK, where that growing concern to standardize and also ensure that every operation in regards to the various sectors are taken into consideration, and some importance are attached to it was when the Piper Alpha incident occurred. Now, when it occurred, a committee was set and the committee gave various recommendations. And that led to some of the requirements in the oil and gas industry where before a project takes place, the E&P company, which is the exploration and production company, needs to put in a safety case, where in the safety case, they need to lay out how the projects they are embarking, the risk involved in the projects, and then how they have put various measures in place to reduce the risk as low as reasonably practical. So also applies to onshore projects. In Ghana, I'm sure the EP will also require those environmental or safety case to be presented for any project of that nature, where every risk and then its mitigating factors are put in place to ensure that the project will not impact personnel or people, the environment, and then also in terms of also how the operations will also have a long-term effect on people and then the asset itself. So the industry has gone through a lot of metamorphosis, if I should put it in that sense, where they have, because of growing concern for safety, standardization has occurred. Now, we look at some key codes and standards. Now, the oil and gas industry, which some of us will know, or all of us will know, normally what we know is that a drilling rig will be in position. They will come and drill based on various geological assessments and petrophysical data, where they will see areas to drill. But after drilling and they found commercial quantities, and then they deemed the commercial quantity viable, or the appraiser viable for commercial production, the companies will start looking at how they will start or bring a production facility to start extracting the hydrocarbon from the reservoir. Now, you must understand that all the phases from drilling, construction, and production, and also decommissioning, whichever stage it is, goes through this requirement of codes and standards. Now, Engineer Gerson made mention of some of the standards in the drilling industry. When you are drilling, the tool inspection, what it involves, all those standards go in to help bring some level of assurance in regards to safety and also operational efficiency. Now, before an FPSO, a production platform, is put in position to start any form of operation, one of the things they consider is that what are the codes and what are the standards and what are even the regulations that goes into having a structure in place or having a facility in place to have this extraction to continue with production and also processes. Now, the FPSO is a vessel. And some of us who have seen the picture before have seen it in real life. You see it is like a ship. Now, we have the International Maritime Organization, IMO. These are bodies that have various regulatory bodies under it. We have the ABS, American Bureau of Shipping, and then we have DNV, Det Nord Veritas. We have BV, which is Bureau Veritas. We have Lloyd's Register. We have RENA. Now, RENA is from Italy. It's an Italian international. It falls under the International Maritime Organization, which is the branch for, which is the Italian section. And then we have the ABS for the American. We have the Det Nord Veritas for the Norwegians. We have, I think, the Lloyd's for the British. BV is also for one of the, I can't really recollect, but it's also for those European, one of the European countries as well. Now, what they do is that they make sure that the vessel you want to use for this production facility goes through this standardization, where various codes are employed for a design, construction, and also operation and also maintenance. So in Ghana, we have 3 FPSOs. We have the Kwame Nkrumah FPSO, which is also called the MV-21 FPSO. Now, that FPSO was built according to the American Bureau of Shipping Standard, ABS standard. So all the hull structures and operations of this vessel is in accordance to the American Bureau of Shipping standard, which also falls under the International Maritime Organization. The broader body for this regulatory bodies, where all of them seek guidelines or operate with the guidelines from the IMO. So we have the MV-25, which is also Professor Tamil's FPSO, which was also built according to the Det Nord Veritas DNV class and society, which is also under IMO. We have the what do you call it? John Adekunku-4 FPSO, which also falls under DNV, which is also the Det Nord Veritas. So you could see that on all these facilities, all of them have a particular class body that regulates their operations and regulate how the vessel was constructed. So any EMP will start from there, and now they will look at the feasibility studies and what equipment they need to extract this oil in terms of building the process facility. You know that the FPSO, or the offshore facility, is a mini refinery. And in a mini refinery, you have pipelines, you have pressure vessels, you have structures, you have risers, and you have pipings. Now, the top side processing pipes you see are pipings. Now, what they lay under the water is pipeline. Onshore to what you see, the pipelines that are buried, they are pipeline, not piping. So there's a difference. Piping is for topside processing facility. Now, pipeline is for transportation of a fluid from one point to the other. So those are some of the things, terminologies we need to understand as well. So now they will also look at, okay, now the hydrocarbon we want to extract, what are the properties? What pressures are we looking at? What temperatures are we looking at? Now, those design premises will help them to know which code they are employing for which particular asset. Now, let me just rush in here. I think I have 20 minutes, so I'll rush in here so that if there are questions, we can address them as the presentation ends. So piping, for process piping, they conform to ASME B31.3. It's an ASME code, ASME boiler and pressure vessel code. Now, this code ensures that all the process piping on any facility or process facility conform to the code, which is the ASME code, in its design, in its fabrication, in its construction, and even also installation. So there are codes that governs how the piping is designed and then also fabricated and constructed. So, and then we have pressure vessels. In the pressure vessels, we are looking at separators, we are looking at heat exchangers, we are looking at other separating filters, etc., on a process facility or on a facility where pressure vessels are designed according to the ASME code. So when you come to the oil and gas industry, one code, there's a particular code which is very, very predominant in terms of how it's been applied to the various assets you see there. And the ASME code plays a very vital role in how the operations of an oil and gas facility goes. And we have also a code for welding. So when you want to weld, let's say a piping, when you want to weld maybe probably a pressure vessel, when you have all the metals, you have chosen all the metals, you boil them together, you want to weld them. There's a code that governs the welding process and also the personnel that are doing the welding process. So all these things are in place to make sure that the outcome of what will be on the process facility is one, standardized, and it will be safe, and it will be it would also in safety in terms of it's not going to result in any form of catastrophe or any related HSE incidents, and also in terms of also ensuring operational continuity, where if you design a particular asset based on the code, where we are looking at the design, the fabrication being aligned to the code which is relating to the item you are making, it brings that confidence and that assurance. So normally, like Engineer Augustine mentioned about standardization. Now, any company that is going to be involved in, let's say, the design, or let's say the fabrication, the construction, or the installation, the various E&P companies will make sure that they have a standardized procedure which talks about their quality assurance and talks about their quality control, which I've made mention of it earlier. Now, where they are assuring the company that our processes make sure that we follow this code and we follow it to the letter. Our personnel involved are certified according to the requirements or the requirements of the code and the various standards. So it brings some level of assurance and confidence to the client that whatever outcome of what they are putting together for the facility will be made in accordance to what the industry practices or requirements are. Now, one of the things we need to understand too is that, one, if you are a company and you don't conform to the legal requirements, which are the codes, and the codes are documents, they are legally binding. If you don't follow them, if there's an incident, the investigation or root cause analysis will start from there, where they will look at how the design premises were made, the construction, the fabrication, and also the inspection. So when they do all that, and they find that the company violated any of the requirements and didn't have all these standards or codes, what they call compliance, they were not compliant to this, they are fined. Now, you can imagine having an oil spill. I think in the United States, you've all heard of the Macondo well incident, where a drilling rig, due to some incident, came had what they call caught fire, and then there were lives that were lost. And aside that, the environment was polluted, and there were spills, and the amount of money BP spent and are still spending was quite huge. And these are things that no company would want to go through. So all of them would do their possible best to follow the codes and the standards to the letter to ensure that they are compliant and also that they are operating safely. Okay, there's another code called the NDT, the ISO 9712, which is also an ISO code that governs personnel's, NDT personnel and method. NDT is basically non-destructive testing. So, for instance, if somebody does a weld for a particular item, and some of you are working in companies where you do a lot of construction, you will see that when the welds are done, they need to do some level of assurance and then some level of control. You have welding inspectors who will make sure that the welding are done in a compliance to the code requirements. Inspections are done. Also, the various inspection methods, like the non-destructive testing, is done to make sure that there is no anomaly found with the weldments that has been made. In anomaly found, we can talk about cracks and all other associated defects that will make the weld vulnerable to certain will be vulnerable to certain conditions or the operating conditions. So all these things are in place to make sure that the industry have some level of soundness. So when you go to companies in Ghana, we have companies like ENI, we have Talo, we have Modec, we have Yensen, we have Technip FMC, we have all these companies. Now, all these companies follow the same standard. So, and that is the interesting and the important thing for us to know, that all of them follow this standard. And they following this standard means that all the companies are all aware of this standard and they operate or do their business in conformity on compliance to the codes and the standards that we are talking about. And it brings some level of comfort to all of us, knowing that we can operate our facility for a very long time, having all these PADC measures in place and to ensure continuity and operational excellence. Now, API RP2A Engineer Gerson also made mention of this. These are for structures, and then all these other codes. So sorry, I'm trying to rush through because of the time, so that we can have some interesting QA sessions and then look at what we can attack. Now, we look at how codes and standards are used in the QA/QC aspect. Now, we talked about project specification. I've made mention of some of them where quality assurance quality control plans typically start by identifying applicable codes and standards. I mentioned this, that even before any project starts, they look at what codes and standards need to be conformed with. Now, we have the inspection test plans, which is derived from the standard to outline inspection steps, code points, and acceptance criteria. What is the acceptance criteria on what I am doing? At what level would they say, or will it be deemed as adequate enough to ensure that this thing is safe to be used, or this thing is safe to be used in relation to what is being designed for or constructed for. So we have audits and reviews. We have the quality assurance, which involves auditing to ensure the proper implementation of standard throughout the supply chain. So throughout the supply chain, meaning that before the item is even procured, and then when the item is procured, and before the item is used, and then as the item is being used as well. So the audit and the review is continuous throughout the assets life cycle. Now, let's look at benefits of adhering to standards and codes. The good thing about today's session is that I've had a very good brother engineer, and that's who have made my life very easier, like I said. This thing, he has mentioned all of them. He mentioned all of them. So I'll quickly rush through it, and then we move on. You talked about consistency and uniformity, which he mentioned code standards ensure that all stakeholders, engineers, contractors, inspectors, regulators, adhere to uniform expectations for quality. So the expectation is that the quality will be uniform. So when you look at the Kwame Nkrumah FPSO, how it was designed and its operations, the assets, how it's being inspected, how it's being operated, it has the same uniform expectation. So if you have a pressure vessel which is in operation, like let's take something like a crude separator on Kwame Nkrumah FPSO, and a crude separator on MV-25, which is at Mills, a crude separator on John Adjei Kufuor FPSO. The inspection of these crude separators will follow the same pattern according to API 510, which also is a recommended practice for pressure vessel inspection, alterations, repairs, and all that. So anything governing it will fall under that code, the API code, where the operator will make sure that the inspections of these items to make sure that they still conform to the design premise is in accordance to this API code. What is stipulated in will be, if it is not stringent, would have to be adopted to make sure that the operational operability of these assets is in conformance or in compliance to what the code requirements are. Now, we talked about safety and risk mitigation as well. So by following the industrial accepted standards and codes, like the ASME boiler pressure vessel code or API 650 for storage tanks, we know that companies will minimize the risk of failures that could lead to environmental disaster or loss of life. Now, we'll look at regulatory compliance. You also made mention of it. Compliance with codes such as API, ASME, and ISO ensures that organizations meet national and international regulations, avoiding fines and operational shutdowns. When we talked about the Macondo well, BP was fined a lot of money because of that spill that occurred at the Macondo well. So no company would want to be in that kind of situation. Now, and onshore as well, all the gas facilities, we have Ghana Gas, Gensa, the power plants, we have Simpower, we have Ameri, we have Asogli, we have the refinery as well, Tor, and then we have the other refinery by there's another refinery as well. They all comply to the various code and standards which ensure their safe operations, and then their safe operations, and also for personal environmental protection as well. Now we'll look at also inspection and testing. So standards provide clear acceptance criteria for inspection. So when you are welding, there's an acceptance criteria for the weldment that is produced. If it falls below that, it has to be repaired or redone. And then there's also for non-destructive testing. NDT is non-destructive testing. We have also for hydrostatic testing. So quality assurance, quality control inspectors rely on the documents, some documents like the welding of pipelines, API 1104, ASME section 4, which talks about non-destructive examination. All the non-destructive examination that is applicable in the industry, this ASME boiler code stipulates all of them, the standard, the criteria, personnel qualifications, what is being required and how to go by it. Everything is stated in there. A lot of companies, inspection companies like my company, we adapt a lot of the code requirements and we infuse it into our procedures to make it a standard document for our operations. We have the ISO 971, which is also qualification of non-destructive testing personnel. There are two of the qualifications of non-destructive testing of personnel. I only say two, but the predominant ones are the ISO 9712 and then the ASNT. ASNT is American Society for Non-Destructive Testing. These two are very important. We have that for Brazil as well. We have that for Australia. We have that for UK. Who have DS also followed the UK one, which is the PCN, falls under the ISO 9712. We have also for Canada, and then we have also for South Africa. So a lot of countries have adapted a standard for qualification of personnel under this particular kind of system or methods. Now, we are looking at also documentation and traceability. And quality assurance systems build around standards ensure documentations like welding procedure specifications, procedure qualification record, material test record, and other test records are maintained, providing traceability and accountability throughout the life cycle of the assets. I'm sure as I try to run up, I want us to look at careers in the quality assurance, quality control. I know we've made mention of a lot. We said a lot about standards, and then also I've also touched a bit on codes. And I'm sure we'll be wondering, are there any career paths to this? And which I'm sure some of us who are very young in the industry, or even some who are also seeking to be employable, would love to see this, where you look at a career like an asset integrity engineer, where on the various FPSOs we have all over the world, we have a representative like this on the FPSO who ensures that the reliability, safety, and longevity of industrial assets, such as equipment and pipelines and structures, these ensure that they are all reliable, and then also the operating aspect, their design requirement. In fact, these are not the only, I would say, these are not the only careers. There are a lot of them. A lot of them. We have a QA/QC inspector who conducts inspections on welding. So we have welding inspectors who are also QA/QC inspectors. We have coating inspectors who are also QA/QC inspectors. We have piping inspectors who are also QA/QC inspectors. We have structural inspectors or pressure vessel inspectors, and above ground storage tanks inspectors. All fall under QA/QC inspectors who ensure compliance with code and regulations. So they are there to ensure that the code and the various regulations or standards are met in accordance to a particular asset and how it's being operated. You can also, be a QA/QC manager where you oversee quality assurance programs, where you supervise inspections and ensure adherence to industry standards. Now, we are looking at non-destructive testing, which also falls under quality assurance, quality control because of what they do. They use techniques like ultrasonic, radiographic testing. These are not only the methods, there are other methods like magnetic particle testing, penetrant testing, phase array, TOF, or time of flight diffraction, magnetic flux, leakage, guided wave. A lot of this non-destructive testing, which we use to check if a particular asset conforms to its original design premise, and to make sure that there are no anomalies or anything that would be detrimental to the operability of those assets. So there's also a career path in that huge one, on high demand in the industry. And you can also be a compliance officer where you ensure that all operations align with regulatory requirements and industry best practices. I would say in conclusion that you see codes and standards are periodically revised to reflect technologically advancements and lessons learned from industry incidents. QA systems must adapt to incorporate these updates, ensuring that organizations stay aligned with the latest safety and performance expectations. In Engineer Augustine's presentation, he made mention of how standards are made. And he made mention of the committee, and then the committee who are made of technical people. They come together to have all these legal documents together, and they send it all across the world for input and feedback. And if there are any change or any updates to the code requirements, they come as an addendum because it's a legal document where all the members and all those who use the code, these codes are informed through that channel, and the various amendments are made to their operations or updated to their operations. I'll end by saying the Holy Book says in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7, that wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. In all thy gettings, get understanding. Thank you very much. And we live in a world our questions create. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Edward Asari Ansah. It was a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Now we know that AWS can mean American World Society. It doesn't always have to be Amazon Web Services, okay? So that was a great, insightful presentation. Okay, so I'd like to share my screen so that we go straight to the questioning session of the webinar. I can see that already we have some 2 questions in the chat box, so I'm going to read that out, and then able personalities are going to help us with that. So to both Engineer and then Engineer Augustine and Mr. Edward Asari, I have a question that I would want to read out to you, sirs. So the first question is, industry associations also have guidelines. Are they also something we can comply with? Hello?
Hello. Engineer Augustine, I don't know, do you want to take this?
Yeah, can you come again, please?
Okay, so say Joe is asking, industry associations also have guidelines. Are they also something we can comply with?
Yes, so we have what we call industry guidelines, and then you are supposed to comply with them. It's not that are they something you're supposed to comply with. You actually need to comply with it. What it means is that, you know, industries have evolved over the years. Now,
Yeah.
what they've come to be known as industry practice are best practices which have over the year proven to be yielding best results or yielding consistent results. So within that industry, there are certain practices that may not be acceptable in other practices, but since it works within the industry you find yourself, then you are supposed to, comply with them.
Okay. Well answered, Joe. I hope your first question has been answered to your satisfaction. We are going to move to the second question, which is, I think this will go to Mr. Edward. Company-specific SOPs, for example, in non-destructive testing, can this also be considered? So the person is talking about SOPs that may be related to certain companies in non-destructive testing. Can this be also be considered?
Sorry, the SOPs. Can you come again with the full meaning of the SOPs?
Standard operating procedures.
Standard
So,
operating, okay.
yes,
Standard operating procedure, okay, yeah, all right. So company-specific standard operating procedures, for example, in non-destructive, can this also be considered?
yeah.
So considered in what form? I would want to understand it considered, because for operating procedures, there are procedures that are couched from industry standards or codes. So let me say, for example, magnetic particle testing. Now, the magnetic particle testing, according to ASME 5, we have some standardization in terms of how it should be done, and also the qualification and how the process should be. Now, those are standards which goes across the industry. Now, even the clients you are going to send your procedure to will ensure and make sure that what you are telling them or what you find in your procedure are in or are coming from this standard you are talking about. So we have the ASME standards, we have the ISO standards as well, based on the scope of work or scope requirements. So a lot of companies have procedures for ISOs, they have procedures also for ASME, they have procedures also for AWS, that's the American Welding Society, and they have procedures for the API and RPs for structures. So based on the requirement, they also have procedure for even power plants, ASME 1, which in relation to boilers and tubings and pipings in the power industry. They all fall under a particular code. So any procedure you are generating, you even have procedure references. When you open the procedures, you see the references where you are getting your information to make your procedure, whether it's from DMV, whether it's from the ASME 5, from ISO, and they are specific, also from ASTM as well. So you can't just develop procedure without making those references from these industrial codes and standards. And that's what every company complies to. I don't know if I've answered this question.
Yes, I'm sure you've answered this question well. Okay, thank you, Mr. Edward. I have another question. So, how do international standards like API and ISO align with our local standards set by organizations such as the Ghana Standard Authority? Are there areas of confliction or like overlaps? I would like to really know.
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay.
It's very simple. First of all, Ghana Standards Authority is part of ISO.
Okay.
Now, as I said, we have standards used globally, standards which are developed for regions, so the EN standards and national standards. But your national standards only operate within this your jurisdiction. Now, what happens is if there is a standard you are developing and there is already an ISO standard for that particular product, then there is something we call adoption. You can adopt that standard wholly. So, for example, there are standards that are adopted by Ghana Standards Authority. Now, there are standards that you can also modify because of environmental conditions. So if I have, for example, if you look at the engine oil standards, we have what we call the winter grading and the tropics. So now in Africa here, we don't have winter. Okay, so we do away, or we do only with the tropics. But in case that whatever is happening globally or developed by ISO works for me perfectly, I don't have to make any other input, then I will adopt. So in that case, you will see that instead of the document or the standard being maybe ISO 2708, it becomes GS ISO. So GS comes first before the ISO, means that it's an ISO standard, but has also been developed as a national standard of Ghana. So it becomes GS before the ISO. So, for example, the petrol standards, EN adopted, the EU, adopted an ISO standard. So you see EN ISO. And there are also some standards adopted by the Great Britain. So you see BS ISO. So what it means is that British standard, but it has been an ISO standard which has just been adopted because it's perfect for their system or the process or the products they want to use it for. So your national standard cannot be conflicting to an international standard. It can only add on, maybe because of, I said, environmental conditions. So some part is modified to suit your immediate environment. That is allowed. And then there's another way you can also adopt the standard wholeheartedly. By that one, also the technical committee must sit down, review and revise the ISO standard and decides that, okay, we are taking it. So then by consensus agreement or by voting, they decide that this section of the standard, we will modify it to suit our conditions or sometimes government's policy of the day. So that becomes a modification, but not in a conflict, in the conflicting order. I don't know if I've answered the person.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Augustine, let me just also add,
Thank you.
especially to the
sir.
codes.
Yeah.
I think even some of the codes, like for instance, the API code, sometimes even make references to the national standard. And they make statements like, if the national standard supersedes this code, then make use of the national standard. You get it? If this code is supersedes the national standard, then you use the code. So in that, like Augustine mentioned, you don't use it. It's not it doesn't conflict. A lot of countries adapt the codes and then the standards in their various operations of the industry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Engineer Augustine and Mr. Edward Asare. We'll have our final question from Engineer Daniel. Please, if you're available, do proceed with your question, please.
Hi, thank you very much, Engineer Augustine and Mr. Ansah. Very good and succinct presentation. So I have a two-in-one question, and one has to do with pre-commissioning. Now, during pre-commissioning, we deal with licenses and vendors. And I just want to understand the role of the licensor and the vendor in standards and codes. So someone is providing a heat exchanger, the licensor for the heat exchanger, the vendor for the heat exchanger. I'm aware that the vendor is the one who sells the heat exchanger, but the licensor, the one who originally designed the heat exchanger. Then the client. In these three parties coming together, how does the code and standards play among them? That's the first question. Now, the second question is, some time ago, I had an encounter with my assets engineer around designing a fired heater. And he spoke, we needed a certain kind of ergonomic design to the fired heater. And he said that what we were asking for is not allowed by the code. And I suppose with the API 538, that's for fired heaters and boilers in petrochemical industries. So I just don't understand, because why it was just a handle or a knob that would make using that auxiliary system easier. But it says that the moment we introduce that, we are no longer designing a fired heater. We are designing something else. I want you to also explain how this code limits design and how it can be accommodated for economic operational instances. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Daniel, thanks so much. I'll start off with the last question. I think for the purpose of design, like I mentioned in my presentation, there are design requirements for an asset. Now, anything that is going to affect the integrity of that asset in terms of whether you are adding or making any modification, it has to go through code approval. Now, if that is going to affect it, you might not get a green light for it because, like you mentioned in the earlier question, where you were talking about the licensor, they are looking at the vendor and all that. You see, in cases like this where you make any modification to a system, you tend to change the whole system. Now, you have drawings. Remember that you have as-built drawings for them, where each and every section of the asset is considered in the drawing and in the design, and how it impacts the asset in the design. For instance, if you should do welding on a shell, there are some vessels may require post-heat treatment. So even with that, you may need to have an ASME boiler inspector on board, which is from ASME, the ASME organization itself, to make sure that what you are doing is in conformance to it. So a whole process will be involved if you have to do any form of modification. So I'm sure that is why most probably you were told that it is not possible. Because what the code, he as an inspector or an asset integrity engineer needs to make sure that the asset you have there and how it was designed for needs to be as it was designed. If there are any modification, it has to go through the modification process and has to also go through the code approval requirements. Okay, so I don't know if I've answered your question there. The first question, which had to do with the licensor and the vendor. You were asking how do the two work together. I think you made mention of the clients as well. How do the three work together? Like you mentioned, the licensor is the regulatory body that grants the licenses or permits to manufacturers. Okay, so in this case, you can say the ASME can be a licensor. Yeah, because that's the regulatory body where we give those licenses a permit to anyone to do those manufacturing. Now, a vendor is the company which will sell the pressure vessel to the client. Okay, so that linkage, they all work together because one, the manufacturer is subjected to the licenses, audits, and reviews to make sure that whatever the manufacturer is doing is in conformity to what the licensor requires, which is the code requirements. So I remember there was a time a client was going to repair its low pressure gas compressor, which is a small pressure vessel bottle. There were some cracks internally, so they wanted to do some repairs. Now, the licensor had to come down to Ghana to make sure that the manufacturer and even the inspection company conform to the requirements of the body, so that every activity, both the repairs and the modifications, were done according to the requirements of the code. So I remember our company was doing the inspection then, was audited, our procedures were audited, our personnel were audited and tested to make sure that they are able to get or be able to catch the various indications that came with the modification. So they work together to make sure that each will serve as the others. Should I say the police? Because you must know that the licensor is like the chief police officer, ensuring that the manufacturer is doing the right thing. Now, the vendor too will also have to make sure that he needs to check the manufacturer to make sure that what he's presenting to him to sell to his clients is the right thing. And the client also has to make sure that what the vendor is giving him is the right thing. So all of them will have audits and review process, which ensure compliance of what they are getting. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank
I'll
you
very
so
much
much.
to add a bit to what Engineer Edward Ansah said.
Yes,
Now,
please.
generally, I'll take it from a generic point first. So, for example, if your company decides to, the way forward or the strategic direction of the company is to be ISO 9001 certified, which is quality management system, then one, your external factors are people who also supply equipment to your company. Okay. Now, those suppliers must be made aware that this is the direction you want to go. So the equipments they must supply must meet certain standards, which are in line with your QMS. So then you have to give them the exact specifications, and also, first of all, even find out if that supplier or the one who is manufacturing it has even the accreditation to supply something within that quality standard that you want before you go in. So we had an issue here the last time. The procurement guys, they got us, how do you call it? So they got us new hydrometers for density. Now, these hydrometers came without the calibration certificate. What it means is that the measurement uncertainty, which is with this, how do you call it, these hydrometers, is unknown, because when I use them to measure density, I have to apply their inherent measurement uncertainty, because there is also what glass expansivity at certain temperatures. All those must be factored in to have an accurate density reading. But the one doing the procurement, not knowing this, just went in and got something. So one, there is something we call the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer certificate, and then the specification, the material safety data sheet, and the technical data sheets. Those must be reviewed first before even or given to the vendor, so that he goes and knows that this is exactly what I'm supposed to give to my supplier. Now, back to the one your colleagues said, if you add, I don't get that, is it a boat or whatever, then you are out of a certain specification. What happens in the oil and gas industry is that standards must be used as the updated versions. Now, I must say here that every 5 years, standards are updated across the industry, for the oil and gas industry, I mean. So every 5 years, we update. Now, even to answer the previous question, there are additions of various versions of standard. So you must know the standard and the version and its addition that you are using, because what happened previously, maybe there were some technological advancement, there was some innovation, there were new methods, and this has been included in the new version. Okay. So maybe there is a way that when that adds, it takes out from the standard, it makes it now not to be compliant to that. But maybe a time will come that that technology will now be included, or that innovation will now be included in the new version. Then you can now go ahead and use it. Another way is that you can also check the version of that standard he is quoting to know where he's coming from. Because, for example, we have GS 140, which is petroleum standard, but it's 2022. But when you come to the diesel, we have GS 141 2024. So it tells you that the 2022 version of the standards for diesel is no more in use. We are using the 2024 version. So the 2022 version may say something that the 2024 one will be in line, but will be an add-on to that. Because before standards are set, the previous standards are well reviewed and revised. And if they see that they are still relevant, then there is no need for addition or revision. But if there are changes in industry, there are technological advancement, and there are new methods, then revisions come about. So I think you can look at the version of the standard is also using again, and then you know the way forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the question has been answered in a detailed format. Thank you so much. So all too soon, we are nearing the end of this webinar. Yes, so over here, I would like you to use like 5 seconds to just go through the chat box. There is a link that has been provided in the chat box. It's for feedback survey. I want you to just take just 2 minutes to fill the feedback survey for us. We want to know how we did, we want to do better, and we want to be able to serve you better. I want to know how I did today. So please kindly fill the feedback survey for us. Thank you. Okay, so up next, we have Managing Industrial Assets for Sustainability webinar coming up. I want you to look out for this space. You can pay attention to our SP WhatsApp pages, and I'm sure the announcements will be made at the right time. Do make a date with us somewhere next week, and then we will meet again. So at this point, we will have a vote of thanks from Engineer Stephen Foko, and then we would end the webinar and say goodbyes. Okay. Engineer Stephen, please, if you are available, kindly do give us the vote of thanks.
Right, Philippa, thank you so much. On behalf of the Career Guide Committee and SBA Ghana as a whole, I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to all of you for making a time to join today's webinar on understanding industry codes and standards. A special thank you goes to Engineer Augustine from Ghana Standards Authority. In fact, he's actually my senior from school, so I couldn't help but smile looking at him. Mr. Edward, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and insights. Your contributions have given us a clearer understanding of how codes and standards shape our industry and make our industry safe and efficient for our practice. Philippa, thank you so much for moderating this day. In fact, you are having so much fun than any of us here. And to the team members, thank you so much for putting this together. It has been an exciting journey to see the light of day for this particular program. Finally, participants, we are so much grateful to all of you. In fact, today wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for your engagement and for your thought-provoking questions. We are so grateful for your time. We are looking forward to having you again next month, and then we hope this session has inspired you to dig deeper into the role of standards in your professional journey. And let's continue to learn, collaborate, and strive for excellence in our various fields. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. We have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.